And Seb, can you make Steve Tucker a co-host?
Can somebody resend Councillor Gamble the link to log in, please?
I can do that, John.
Samuel, you're a star.
Just to let everybody know that the live stream has been started slightly early, so we are streaming. But so if we keep the council chamber mic on mute until the vice chair is ready to start the meeting.
The meeting to order and request a nomination, please, for a chairman for this evening's meeting.
Nominate Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Councillor Boyce. Is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Lloydall. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Then in that case, Councillor Bentley, if you'd like to take the chair, please.
Nice. Divine. Okay. Evening, everybody. In accordance with the Openness of Local Bodies Regulations 2014, this meeting is being live streamed and may otherwise be recorded, filmed or communicated on other media platforms. Recording of this meeting will be made available on the Council's YouTube channel shortly after the meeting. Both councillors and officers in attendance are reminded to make full use of and to speak clearly into the microphones available at all times. A reminder that mobile phones should be turned off or put on silent mode. Those present at the meeting should refrain from taking telephone calls. Apologies for absence.
Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Robert Easton, Councillor Ridley, Councillor Linda Broadley. Yeah.
Thank you. And the Hack.
Sorry, yeah, and Councillor Hack.
And that's it. Thank you. Thank you. Appointment of substitutes.
None have been received, Chair.
Yeah. Any declarations of interest? Councillor Kaufman.
Yeah, I may be in order for me to declare an interest in item 11 on the agenda. I'm a member of the executive of OB Stakeholders. I personally have no financial interest in it, but I would like some advice as to what I should do as far as the debate is concerned in the exempt part of the agenda.
Mr. Gill.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Kaufman. Your declaration is a non-pecuniary declaration. Therefore, you're entitled to remain in that item during the debate and vote as appropriate.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other declarations of interest?
Sorry, point of order, Your
Councillor Boyce.
but not wishing to put Councillor Carter on the spot. Councillor Carter is clearly present. He's present in the capacity of being the ward councillor relating to that particular item. At what point should we declare he's both here and his interest? Purely out of courtesy, because the man is sitting here, and more importantly, propriety. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boyce, and I apologise for my mistake because I was concentrating on the election of the chair. The position is, Chair, that Councillor Carter is the ward member in respect of the item at number 11. Councillor Carter has expressed a request that he be allowed to speak on that item in the closed session and thereafter leave the room, not be involved in the debate and not vote. It's entirely a matter for you, Chair, whether you're prepared to allow him to do that.
Thank you. I will allow him to do that at the appropriate time. Okay. Minutes of the previous meeting. And we signed. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Action list arising from the previous meeting. There were no action lists arising from the previous meeting. Petitions and deputations.
None have been received, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, moving on to agenda item 7, Leicester Municipal Waste Management Strategy. Is John Wells, are you taking this?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good evening. A review of the waste management strategy commenced earlier this year, led by the County Council, who have commissioned support from an external company to help inform the process. The current strategy is now nearly 20 years old, having been adopted in 2002, with reviews and updates in 2011 and 2015. In getting to this point, all districts and boroughs within Leicestershire, that is the Leicester Waste Partnership, have contributed. There have been numerous project meetings and workshops held at which political representation has been present from each organisation. The key documents as part of the overall strategy consist of a headline strategy, options appraisal, and environment report, and they are still in draft form. The new strategy sets out the direction of travel from 2022 until 2050. It is about waste prevention and reuse by creating greater opportunity and infrastructure for recycling. It has ambitions, pledges and targets which are detailed in the report. I've highlighted some of the key elements for you tonight. We need to consider the Environment Act implications. This Act received royal assent on the 9th of November, and we are currently awaiting secondary legislation to see how that will be enacted. Among the many new duties and requirements, there will be an obligation for each waste collection authority, of which we are one, to provide a weekly food waste service. It seems unlikely that this will come into effect until 2023 onwards. There may be impact also on our own garden waste service, although at the moment detail is somewhat sketchy. The Act also further introduces extended producer responsibility for packaging, something that's been campaigned by DEFRA for many years, and a deposit return scheme for drinks containers. There's also an ambition in there for net carbon zero to be achieved by 2050 in Leicestershire, for everyone to reach a recycling rate of 65% by 2035, for a reduction in materials sent to landfill sites from currently 30% to 5% within the next 4 years, and for the full range of recyclables to be collected by 2025. To inform the strategy, an options appraisal was carried out for all waste partnership members. Details of this can be found in section 9, which is on pages 12 to 15 of the report. And I've provided a larger version of the evaluation matrix as an appendix for ease of reading. The criteria for assessment was agreed with all waste partnership members. So at the moment, there is a proposed consultation process, which is detailed under section 7, which is on page 10. And that will be led by the county, with all partners contributing by providing links on websites and distributing information that will be centrally held by the county council. This will lead to a further report being presented next summer before any formal adoption takes place. Questions will be posed around views on priorities in the vision, home composting, reuse of items, a wider range of recyclable collections, food waste, obviously, satisfaction of our household recycling sites, and curbside collections, and any barriers that people have in accessing services at the moment. The consultation is anticipated to start on the 12th of January and run for approximately 12 weeks. Thank you, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Any questions? Councillor Bolter.
Thank you, Chair. Yes. Like other things, the mist got quite a bit out of this. First of all, I objected to the word pledge. That's to me the wrong word. I suggested target in that to Leicester County members. Whether they're going to change that, I don't know. But pledge means you're definitely going to do something. Some of these things districts aren't going to do because there's not the finance to do it. Collection of garden waste, all the districts agree they're going to keep charging for that, apart from one that is free of charge, that's North West Leicester. So we all agree we're going to charge for that garden waste collection. I also pointed out that Oban Wixton do a weekly refuse and recycling service, and that's not reflected in the report. So any consultation that goes out needs to be that Oban Wixton do a weekly refuse and recycling service, and that's not here. So as the report is at the moment, I wouldn't agree to it because it doesn't reflect what we do in this borough.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bolton. John, you want to reply to that? John Wells?
Yes, so thank you, Chair. They are looking at the pledge. The documents, as I mentioned, are in draft form, and there's one of the recommendations on the report is that Philippa, as head of service, has authority with councillors Bolter and Boyce to agree those final reports before they go out. So the word pledge is being looked at, I can assure you of that. In terms of garden waste, at the moment, the government are moving that there should be a free garden waste service, but the detail on what that is required to be are yet to be finalised. So clearly we can't really answer that point. I've asked, and the partnership have now agreed that they will model further options around a chargeable garden waste service being actually continued, and that will form part of the options appraisal before any final decision is made. And clearly the weekly services that we offer, I've also asked for information and costings around what that would look like if that was changed as well, just to reassure you we are looking at all those options at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wells. Does that answer your question, Councillor Bolter, that if this is approved, you will be part of the decision making for the final draft? So
Yes,
you have to put your bits into that.
The other thing is that the amounts, the goods that we do collect for recycling is dictated by the county council. If you remember, they changed the contractors and we had to go to case back and they described what we could collect and couldn't collect. That reduced our recycling target for quite a bit, because we included in previously clothing, shoes and bags, handbags, which weighed a lot more than what the goods are at the moment. So by county prescribing what we did, actually reduced our recycling target.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bolter. Councillor Lloyd.
Number 10. Thank you. Yes, I concur with what Councillor Bolter said wholeheartedly. I put the word down strategic, or the strategy. I must have that's the wrong word, because you're actually promising something that you may not be able to deliver. I know from a government place, every time they place an HS2 and then they've gone back on it and it doesn't work. So that's, I don't feel I can say, well, I'm going to place that this is going to happen, because I've got no control over it. You're asking me to support it. Secondly, it's in the approval to support public consultation on 7, which is, you quite rightly point out, is on page 10. You can support the principle of public consultation and engagement, but we don't know what the questions are going to be. And therefore, I was subject to approval, subject to our colleagues knowing what the questions are going to be, and they're going to share those. But it's already alluded to that we do weekly collections. In one of the sections here, on 10H, we'll be mindful of the public consultations and ensure alignment. Our public consultation and the alignment was our residents wanted weekly collection, therefore to be included. And lastly, if I may, again, it's all subject on page 12 at the top. It's page number 7. It says it about subject to funding. It's all subject to funding, and therefore, whether we have an ABC in there and all this is subject to funding, I'll just share that with you. I'm not putting a proposition there. It's got to be somewhere to say all of this is subject to funding. Because when you talk about compulsory food waste collection, we have no funding for that. And if it's not going to be funded, or they have a tendency to pass the cost on to the local authorities, where we're going to get the money from to do that, it's important. And I'd like to would put an amendment in on page 13. It's option 5, restricted residual waste A and B collection fortnightly. And what they should put in there, option 1, referring to weekly collections. It's not showing. It's showing and moving towards fortnightly all through the document. As I've just pointed out on page 10H, we have done some consultation, and it's important that that's taken on board with regards to what our residents say and what they particularly want. I don't want this to disenfranchise that, but it's important that that's in there so that our residents, that's why it's subject to what type of questions you want to ask. Therefore, we need to be in a position that says, is it weekly, fortnightly, or whatever, and you've got to give them a choice on that basis. With that, I'll be quiet.
Councillor Lloyd. Mr. Wells.
Sorry, yes, thank you. In terms of the questions, they're not very detailed, they're very, very general. I'm happy that the recommendation will include the questions if that supports what the councillors mentioned. As I get a flavour for what the questions were, really around people's views on priorities and vision, home composting, reuse of items, recyclables, etc. I think we're not making a decision here tonight. This is simply a draft consultation, which will go out to members of the public, residents, businesses, etc., with a view to trying to inform the approach. And I think ultimately the decision that you'll be making will be one that actually come back. So you're not making a decision tonight, sorry, but you're actually making a decision on the draft in terms of the approach. But actually there'll be a report in the summer when perhaps there'll be more detailed discussions around some of these issues. Thank you.
Mr. Wells. Councillor Boyce.
Thank you, Chair. Two major issues. One, it's actually the resolution, recommendation. I do slightly object to named members. It is actually named, and that would be much more appropriate. And I think going forward, we should avoid using any member's name and only use their position. The Bolter is Chair of Services, and I'm the leader of the council. That is a generic title, and should the person change, the title doesn't, and thus you achieve continuity. That aside, there are two targets which are quite stretching. One is that residual waste should be 5%, and secondly, recyclates at 60%. If you read on page 14, 9.7, the table, the irrelevant of how you fiddle about and change the parameters, what is absolutely clear to achieve those two targets, business as usual is not going to happen. Either we assist and are part of that change, or it is more likely, frankly, that the change will be imposed upon us. I think it's absolutely right in any situation to consult properly with our residents, and that is what this is proposed to do. I accept there are manners of detail which has been delegated to be resolved, and I'm not arguing with that, but the one thing is certain, given 1, 2, 3 or 4 years, the system of collection will change because it has to change to achieve the targets required.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point of clarification with regards to the table on in Appendix 1 on page 16. I just wanted to understand what criteria are we using, or what are the targets for in terms of carbon, and why is it worse performing for options 6, 7, and 8? I wanted a point of clarification on that.
Wells.
Yes, bear with me 1 second. So I've got the detail in front of me. That's on pages 12 and 13 provided there. So in terms of carbon, the restricted residual waste, so that's a residual waste collected fortnightly, plus option 3, which is around recycling, free garden waste collection, separate weekly food waste, means actually there are less transport movements, and clearly there's less movement in to and from landfill sites. So from that point of view, that answers number 5. In terms of 6 and 7, that's because of the detail behind those documents. And I'm happy to actually provide a more detailed response to the councillor after the meeting, which I can let members have once I've got all the documentation relevant to those.
Okay. If you could, please.
Thank you.
Councillor Lily Kaufman.
Thank you, Chair. In all the calculations, and I'm sure you have you factored in that eventually we will be using electric lorries, or are you going still on the petrol use of lorries?
Wells.
Again, that's a detail I don't have to hand, but I can actually come back to you on that separately, if I may. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Bolter.
Thank you. Just to point out that the consultant county council employed rated Oberlin Wixton's carbon footprint. I think it was the second lowest in the county. Mr. Wells most likely remember that. I think it was second lowest in the county, well below some of the other districts with carbon footprint. So that's something to bear in mind as well. That's on weaker collections.
Councillor Bolter. Joshi.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted a clarification on page 12, where it talks about separate weekly food waste collection. Now, we had that a long time back in Oadby, but that was got rid of because of whatever reasons. I don't know. It was before I became a council member. So why is that again on the table?
Wells, I believe, if I can just say, the original food waste collection was a trial, which we as councillors decided to extend, but eventually had to allow it to phase out. So that was why it was in one place in Oadby and one place in Wigston as a trial. Mr. Wells, could you explain why this has come back?
The government have mandated every waste collection authority to deliver a weekly food waste. The background to that simply is that 65 or up to 65% of your refuse, your residual waste, is made up of food waste. So therefore, if that's taken out, there'll be less need for a residual waste collection. It won't be going to landfill, so therefore they can achieve the landfill reduction target. They'll be using it for generating other sources of energy, so anaerobic digestion, and for powering power plants and so forth going forward. So the government's real overview is very much about reusing food waste rather than it going to landfill.
Thank you. You want to come back, Councillor Joshi?
Yeah, I get that completely. Thank you. Is that consistent with the trial that was adopted?
Mr. Wells?
Not to get too technical.
No, I think in principle there's been a lot of trials, and North West are currently running one. I think they've moved on in terms of technology, how they can reuse food waste a lot more now than they did before. And I think it's something that we maybe, it'll be a slow burner, the uptake be less. But I think there's also a great desire for actually people to self-compost their own waste as well as part of the proposals. But we are awaiting a lot more information. And there's one point that was mentioned earlier about funding. The government have given an indication that they will, any new burdens that are placed on the authority, they will fund.
Okay, thank you. I think we need to move on now. So the recommendations are to approve and support the public consultation approach. Delegation should be given to the Head of Customer Services and Transformation in consultation with the Leader of the Council and the Chair of Services Committee to agree the final contents of the documents. I will move that from the Chair. Do I have a seconder? Second. Councillor Boyce. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 8. Procurement of housing repairs, maintenance and void property programme contract. Do we have Mr. Eyre here, the housing manager?
You do? Yes, Chair, I'm
Hello.
here. Thank you. Yes, this brief report really highlights or seeks to approval to start the process of the procurement of the repairs, maintenance and voids contract. Currently, the council is spending around about £600,000 a year on the repair on this element of the service, and this is going to a number of external contractors within the Leicestershire area. It's been highlighted throughout the audit process for several years now that we're not meeting our obligations of financial compliancy through the procurement process, and in addition, it's suggested we're not also demonstrating that we have got are delivering on a value for money basis. We're responsible not only to members within this, but also through the housing regulator and our tenants. And we do have to look at some point is consulting with our tenants in respect of what our offer is in respect of the repairs and maintenance service that they receive. It's proposed that the contract will run for approximately 3 years with the option to extend for 2. And the bids will be evaluated on a 60-40 split, 60% being quality and 40% cost. And the specification will also focus on what the contractor can deliver for us in terms of social value and employment and environmental requirements from the council. We are looking to work, well, we would like to work with Wellens, who are our partners in the procurement process. So I'm happy to take any questions on this.
Thank you. Councillor Kaufman, Jeffrey.
Thank you, Chair. I understand why this is happening, but I just wondered if it was essential that we go to only one contractor. This is a fair sized contract, and as an authority, we've always tried to give our business to local firms. And I just wondered whether we couldn't have two contractors in this. I was said 200,000 each, because I think it's 630,000 a year. 2 or 3 contractors to apply for this, because I think it'd be better for the residents who and us who will be able to decide on each job which is the best value, and it will be of a size, the contract, to enable local smaller firms to do it. I'll probably be told there's some legal objection, we can't do it, but to me that just does seem common sense.
Okay, Mr. Gill.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to tell you that you're completely wrong. The position is, because of the value of the contract, we have to go out to a public procurement exercise. There's no reason why a number of smaller companies can't get together and put in a bid. But because of the value, we have to make sure that we're getting value for money and that the procurement process is open and transparent. I appreciate that what you're saying about local businesses and what we would like to offer to local businesses, but on a contract of this size, the council is duty bound to get economies of scale. And that's one of the reasons of why it goes out. As I've said, sometimes what will happen, there'll be a framework, and the framework may have a number of smaller companies on it, which we can call off if we go into it. Sometimes a number of small companies will join together and put in one bid, and sometimes you get big companies putting in a bid. But as Mr. Ayres said, well, it's not just about value for money, it's also about the quality and the social benefit that can be given. Hopefully that will answer your question. But what we can't do, because of the size of this contract, we cannot split the contract into little bits, because we have to look at the aggregate value of the contract. So therefore, if you've got 3 contracts for £100,000 in a year that all sort of run together and mesh together, it's actually a contract of £300,000. It's not a contract of 100 and then 100 and then 100. And when you reach the target level, do the procurement exercise.
I accept that. I just wondered, the type of work they do is quite varied. It's everything, I assume, from tiles falling off the roof to a dripping tap. I just wondered, with a bit of imagination, A, whether we could help local companies to achieve what we want, or B, I haven't seen the contract, so I don't know what's in it, or find some way that if it's a plumbing job, you could turn it into a plumbing contract. So you've got those services. I just would like to help local business, and I don't think this is the way of doing it.
There is a way that you can do it in terms of your smaller repairs. What you actually do is you create what's called a schedule of rates. So you go out to the market, you have a look round, you see how much it's going to cost to do the dripping tap or replace a door, whatever, and then you set your level of what you're going to pay, and then you invite companies to join the list of people that will do that work. So there's 2 aspects. There is the big contract, and there's a schedule of rates for the minor works that are done on a sort of ad hoc emergency basis. So there's certainly no reason why we can't look at introducing a schedule of rates.
Well, if that's a means of opening up to local businesses, I wonder if the officers would be prepared to do that. An extra responsibility, but we do owe it to local tradespeople.
Okay, Councillor Lloydell.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Is that working?
Working now.
Working now? Okay. Yeah, I mean, again, I've always supported local business and I have done forever. I take on board what Mr. Gill was saying, but the counties used to have the same problem. Not a problem. What they did for big contracts, they actually split them down to smaller contracts. So then it took them below the total and they let it out, which was quite common. We've done it here in the past. We have under the compulsory competitive tendering. And the accumulation of something that says, oh, once it's reached that much, it's got to go out to get value for money. I don't buy that at the moment because having looked at it, my own work, as I've got, these things have in the past have happened and smaller contracts have been given. But I will continue to support those small businesses as a borough. We should be looking after those small businesses and making sure that we work around that we can do that. This doesn't. Lessons to be learned. We've had a big contract before. It's just been suggested we were looking at this to get value for money. Does that mean the big contract that it's just disappeared? We didn't get value for money. So who's responsible for that? You know, so big contracts don't always work. Bigger contracts mean big profit for that individual. Smaller contracts means that more money can be spent on the actual jobs that's being done. It is. So I obviously don't support this because I support small businesses and so on. And having worked with this in the past and said that other authorities have made smaller contracts so that we can embrace our own contractors without going Nottingham, Northamptonshire, is one that's down south somewhere, not here, but somewhere else. So I think we need to look at that quite closely. You can get value for money for smaller contractors because they're a lot more cost effective, in my opinion, rather than the big contractors. So I'll depart from supporting what's being said unless we can convince me that we're going to get something in there that gives us local contractors a fair bite of the cherry. Big contracts like this, small contractors are not going to do it. They won't be able to. They wouldn't be able to. Right. And then you say, oh, we get together. Well, who's going to get them together? Who? No, you put a little bit in here just to say we'll provide opportunity for local-based contractors. Okay, it's in there. Does it mean anything? For me, it doesn't. Big is not always beautiful. So I'd like to think that you can convince me that our local contractors within our area will get a fair shake of the contract.
Okay, thank you. Commy, you want to make a comment on that?
Yeah, because obviously from a financial perspective, value for money, we want the best service at the right price. I have no objections to smaller contractors, going forward, putting themselves forward for this procurement, but you've got to look at economies of scales. What you'll probably tend to find is for certain jobs, medium to large size companies will be much cheaper and will be able to deliver the services. And there may be cases where smaller ones would be able to deliver a good service, but we have procurement rules, and also we want to get the best value for the council. Obviously, it's nice to help small businesses, but at the end of the day, this is a contract for, what was it, 630,000 over 5 years. So we have to get value for money, and that's the overriding factor.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ayres, you want to comment as well?
Yes, Chair. I'll just, if I can draw members to line 1.6, where I've said that it's proposed that we will advertise this contract as an open contract. That's an important sentence, because what we will do, that opens it up for locally based people to bid for that contract. We could go down frameworks, and we could go down, invitations to tender and all sorts of different ways, which brings in the more professional, the outfits that have got procurement people within their organisations. An open contract will kind of open that door up to locally based contractors. And there are one or two contractors already that have asked about this process, and is that something that they can apply to? And we said certainly if we go down that route, that is, that's something that they would be encouraged to go, to look at. And where it's possible, we will support people with support contractors with advice and support within our sort of ability to do that, as long as we don't run foul of any procurement rules during that time.
Okay, thank you. Paul?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, whilst I don't disagree that we need to be supporting our local contractors, what we also need to bear in mind as well is that we need to be providing value for money and a quality service for our tenants, and that hasn't been mentioned so far. And by going through this procurement process, then that would ensure that is the case. The other point I just wanted to mention as well is in the presentation earlier, I talked about how we streamline the housing team. And of course, we need to then follow that through in terms of how we let our contracts and how we manage them. And having a single contractor will help us follow that through in terms of enabling the team to be able to do that. It's a lot more work if you've got lots of different smaller contracts that you need to manage all at the same time.
Councillor Boyce? Sorry, Councillor Boyce. Councillor Bolter, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. You've been here before. Some years ago, we dispensed with the local contractors and let the contractor, a large national contractor. It went pear-shaped after a few months because they weren't prepared to do the small jobs and the timescale that are required. And this is the same we're going down now. Big contractors will not meet the deadlines that we want them to meet because it's not worth their while doing it. They will batch jobs together. And you can't write the contract to do that. Because we tried before, it didn't work. At the moment, a few years ago, we benchmarked our prices against other contractors. And before Mr. Ayres' time, it's gone back 3 years, maybe 4 years, to make sure we're giving value for money to our residents. And we found that our rates were lower than anybody else's. So Mr. Gill has mentioned a schedule of rates. Yes, that's used at the present time. Certain jobs use a schedule of rates for, so we know how much we're paying and the contractors meet that. So yes, all these small bits have been added together to make one large contract. They were never designed to be like that, never have been. So experience in the past means that it's not actually cheaper. In the past, we've got it turned out dearer for poor quality of work for our residents. And I'm looking at our residents, they're our customers. I don't want them to be disadvantaged by going to a large national contractor and falling out on the small jobs that are around and about, which are the day-to-day jobs that will keep our residents' homes safe and secure. So I'm sorry, but I can't support going out to a local contractor, to a national contractor.
Yes, I understand what you say, Councillor Bolter, but as has been said, you can have the big contract and you can still have the schedule of rates to do those smaller jobs and provide that service. Councillor Boyce?
Thank you, Chair. 3 things have come to mind as we've had this debate. The first one is sometimes you have to find value for money. Value for money is not the pound, shillings and pence alone. It's about the quality of the work, the sustainability and durability of the work as well. And I think I understand that our current service should be at least be the benchmark for where we are. Now, that may mean that actually we need to improve it, putting it simply.
Yeah.
But that's the benchmark. The second thing is this issue of added value and local benefit. Meeting earlier about Brox Hill, the tender there, which I know is overall exempt, but one of the issues that is always looked at is added value locally. And I absolutely see no reason why that question of local added value cannot be added into the tendering process. And that, to me, I think should be in there, and it should be scored reasonably highly. The other issue is we're all sitting here and we have a financial interest in this because basically we run the HRA. The people who really matter are actually our tenants. And therefore, can I suggest that within the tendering process and certainly the decision-making process, we find some way of involving either the tenants in general or a representative of the tenants as to be part of this decision-making process. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Joshi.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with what's been said so far. I think we should put out the contract, but put it out to the local tender market. I'm all in support of working with local contractors. I think having a big contract with a company that's not based in Leicester, it doesn't work. Quality, value of money, that's important. But usually I'm from a private sector and I've been working in the NHS where they contracted out all their maintenance facilities. And again, it went pear-shaped and now they don't have anybody in-house to do the work. So I think when you give it to a big contractor, yes, they'll promise you and everything, but then they won't stick to the SLA figures that we agree with them, etc. So I'm all for going for what Gil said, as to break it down into smaller contracts with certain specifications of the various the smaller jobs, not so much the smaller jobs, break it down into plumbing, heating, etc. like that. I mean, I've worked with frameworks and I've applied for contracts myself, but as a small company, you're never looked at. And to get together with some other companies, it's just going to be hard work because those bigger boys will just take over. They've already been penciled in to get the contract, which isn't really fair at all on the local economy that we're trying to rebuild.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, we just need to remember what was said previously, that this procurement process will allow local people to apply. Just because it's a big contract does not mean to say it will go out of Leicester. We don't know that yet. We'll have to wait and find out. This is just the process of starting it. Councillor Lloyd?
Yeah, very quickly. I was grateful for what Mr. Harris said and thank him for that. But unfortunately, what was just said with regards to we want a single contract because it's easier to manage, that tells me that a decision has already been made. So I have to say, I learned from the fact that as Councillor Bolger said, we had a big contract, pear-shaped. I spent a lot of time going into people's houses looking at the shoddy workmanship and certainly get value for money. It took us over a year to try and get a survey done to see how residents feel. So big contract, easy to manage, wasn't managed in my opinion, because after that, having to find out what was happening and the bad workmanship. So thank you, Mr. Hayes, but it's already been made to say the single contract is easy to manage, which has just been said. It means that some decisions have already been made, and what you've said there, I'm not quite sure I'm happy with. Thank you.
Mr. Gill?
Thank you, Chair. To make matters perfectly clear, no decision has been taken because to do so would be in breach of the procurement regulations. Neither myself, Commy, or any of the officers are going to put ourselves at risk on that. Secondly, I draw your attention to the recommendation. It says to approve the commencement of procuring a contractor to deliver the housing repairs, maintenance and void programme. He doesn't say a big main national company. He says a contractor. Mr. Eyre has made it clear that this is going to be an open process. And if there is a contractor that is local to Wixton that is capable of providing that service, they are perfectly entitled to put in a bid, and it will go into the pot and it will be measured against the same criteria as everybody else.
Okay, I'll take one more speaker before we move on. Councillor Lloydell.
Thank you, Chair. Just on what's been said just then, just quickly, the wording is very, very specific. It does say a contractor. Could the wording be changed there to include a group of contractors bidding together? A contractor is very specific, that you might have a group of local contractors that are all bidding as a group instead of individuals, because
Can I come straight back on that one, Chair? I'm more than happy for it to be amended. What I would suggest, if you want to move the amendment, is that it says of procuring a contractor / contractors to deliver the housing programme, and then that gives that flexibility if a group of contractors want to come together.
I've just got to add in as well, there was a second part to that, is that if we're building in for the SLAs, can we build in like penalty clauses and termination clauses?
That will all form part of the contract. When we have a contract, I can assure you that there are penalty clauses, there are break clauses, there are dispute resolution issues, all part of the contract, because not to have them would put the council at risk. So we do it on every single contract that we enter into.
Thank you.
Councillor Boyce.
Thank you, Chair. Freedom, you simply change the wording to a contract. That resolves and gives the flexibility that you require without prescribing something which actually you could fall foul of, because I'm sure there's a way of finding out that actually you haven't quite included everything. Just, it's a contract. That makes life much easier.
So is John going to move that?
Would you like to move that as an amendment, Councillor Boyce?
Is that an amendment to the amendment, or is that an amendment?
Well, the amendment was not seconded, so we're now in a position that if between the two of you, you want to agree that the word is changed to a contract, then that's fine. So,
okay, so that amendment has been moved by Councillor Boyce, seconded by Councillor Lloydell. All those in favour of the amendment?
That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Any against? Any abstentions?
1, 2,
3.
Yeah.
Okay. So we will move on now. I will formally move the recommendation to approve the commencement of procuring a contract to deliver the housing repairs maintenance void programme. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Boyce. All those in favour? Keep your hands up, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Any against? Any abstentions?
1, 2, 3.
You didn't say Anna.
Okay, that has been moved. Right, we will move on. Agenda item 9. Standards and ethical indicators. Gill.
Yeah. So this is the standard report that comes to members to receive figures for local determination of complaints and ethical indicators, and it's report 2. It provides you with information in relation to member complaints, corporate and ombudsman complaints, FOI requests, ASB reports and resolutions. If you go to the report itself, you will see that in terms of member complaints, in quarter 2, there was 1 complaint against a member, which was by another member. At the time of writing this report, that was still outstanding, as I was in the process of assessing it, and the outcome will be reported in quarter 3. Going further down to the body of the report, there's been no investigations, and therefore there's nothing to report in respect of any parts of the code that have been breached. Underneath, we have our normal standard figures in terms of objections to the council's accounts. These figures are fairly standard, and I won't go through them line by line. If any members have got any comments on them, then I'll be more than happy to answer them. There are just 2 points that I would make. One, in respect to the food safety inspections, which falls down at the bottom, where we have been reporting that we have had some difficulty, and I mentioned it briefly in the presentation about the structure with regard to undertaking food safety inspections. That was partly due to the lockdown being extended through until the 19th of July. And it was also down to the fact that we've had difficulty in recruiting a food safety environmental health officer. What I can say on that is that I'm now satisfied that we are bringing that matter back into a reasonable position, because we have been able to engage with officers from Harborough, and they are working on a sort of pay-as-you-go basis for us to undertake these inspections. And I'm aware that we've done a number of them very recently, and they'll be reported through once those inspection reports have been completed. And the only other thing I would add, members, is I've been informed this last week by the Investigatory Powers Commissioner's Office that they will be undertaking an annual review of the council's use of Ripa in the first quarter of next year. That's their January through until March. So I'm currently in liaison with the inspector at the IPCO's office to get the inspection prepared, and it's going to be an easy one because we haven't used it, we don't use it, but we still have to go through the process of having the inspection about our use or lack of use. If that makes any sense.
Not really. Okay.
Move the report.
Okay, I will second it. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you.
Chair, could I ask for a short respite break once we go into camera, please?
No.
Formally move the chair be removed for a while.
Moving to the session, right. And then we'll have a 5-minute break.
Agenda item 10, exclusion of the press and public. It is resolved that under section 100A, brackets 4, the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public now be excluded from the remainder of the meeting on the grounds that the business to be transacted involves the disclosure of the exempt information as defined in Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act as amended, and in all the circumstances, the public interest is maintaining the exempt items outweighs the public interest in disclosing the exempt information. The live stream of this meeting will now be stopped, and I will formally close the meeting for 5 minutes.
One orderly queue.